Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the UVic Alumni Guest Speakers Series event, a conversation with Bev Sellars. I'd like to take a moment at the very start to acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt people, on whose territory this university is situated, and the Lekwungen and WSÁNEĆ peoples, whose historical relationships with this land continue to this day. My name is Marian Buller. I'm a member of the Mistawasses Nehewek, a Cree First Nation in Saskatchewan. I have the privilege of being the Chancellor of the University of Victoria, and I am a two-time grad. I am a UVic alumna with a Bachelor of Arts in 1975 and also a Bachelor of Laws in 1987. It's my pleasure to be joining all of you this evening as your host. Now, before I formally introduce Bev Sellars and go through a little bit of housekeeping, I'd like to introduce a special guest here tonight, a friend of the University of Victoria and a member of the Songhees and Tsartlip Nations, Danica Paul. Over to you, Danica.
Good evening, everybody. I hope that you are all doing well. Aikonis konanga hela, asiam nishwelikwa, Danica thanasne, Chesaleasin, Songhees Sartlip Iahausit, Thanamain, Questane, Thanatain, Sawiluk. Good evening, everybody. I just introduced myself in the Lekwungen language. My name is Danica. I come from Songhees, Sartlip, and Hausit Nation. My dad is Tommy Paul, and my mom is Diane Sam. My connection to the Lekwungen territory is through my grandfather, Francis Sam, and his parents are Florence and Bernard Dick. Haichka at the house Xat'sull. Thank you for the new day. Asiam Nishwelikwa, Asiam Nishwelicha, Haichka Gonzana Tito Lekwungen Tunnel, Haichka Siam Nikwili. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Haichka Siam Nikwilia. My honorable close family, my honorable close friends, thank you for coming to Xat'sull and Lekwungen land, the land of the smoked herring. Thank you, my honorable people, for allowing me to open up your meeting in a good way. Haichka Siam, thank you very much.
Thank you, Danica, for your important words of welcome and for being here with us, joining us for this event. As we begin, I'd like to take a moment to extend a special shout out to those who are joining us, who are part of the UVic Indigenous alum community. We met earlier for our first meeting. I'm very grateful to be the honorary chair of this community. This is a community that was set up by Indigenous alum for Indigenous alum. And I want to thank all of the Indigenous alums who've already signed up for this community, and for those Indigenous grads who are joining us tonight who haven't joined our community, come on in, come and join us. And the link is available to you, maybe even on your screen, if not in the chat. Now, as you might have seen in your email yesterday or in the slides for the event today, there's going to be a prize draw, and you could win one of 10 copies of Bev Sellars' award-winning book, They Called Me Number One. If you're interested in receiving a copy of the book, please be sure to fill out the entry form online, and the alumni staff will share the link as well, I think, if they haven't already. Everyone on the call tonight is welcome to enter, and the draw will be done in a couple of days, and there's plenty of time for you to enter into the draw. I wish you all the best of luck, because if you haven't read Bev's book already, I highly recommend it. I started reading it and I couldn't put it down until I had finished it. It's a wonderful book. So good luck, everybody. Now, before we get to the main presentation by Bev, I just have a few housekeeping things that the alumni people have said I have to tell you about. First, there will be time for questions and a bit of a discussion after Bev's presentation. To ask a question during the question time, pardon me, I'm reading from notes. Please type your question into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to monitor the questions as they come along. Next, if you'd like to access closed captioning tonight or turn it off, please click on the closed captioning icon. It's a letter C inside of a square, and it's also on the bottom of your Zoom here. And finally, if you're having any technical difficulties or need any assistance regarding tech side, please use the Q&A box, again, at the bottom of your screen here, or send an email to alumcoor@uvic.ca. That's ALUMCOOR@uvic.ca. And one of the alumni staff members will be able to assist you. Don't ask me, because I won't be able to help you. Now, tonight, we are very pleased to welcome our special guest speaker, who I respect very much. Bev Sellars is a 1997 UVic alumna with her Bachelor of Arts from the Faculty of Humanities. Bev is also a Distinguished Alumni Award recipient. She's an award-winning author and a former counselor of the Xat'sull First Nation in Williams Lake, British Columbia. I've had the privilege of first meeting Bev back in about 1990 or 1991 during the Caribou Chilcotin Justice Inquiry. I've been an admirer of Bev's ever since. Tonight, Bev will speak to the differences in Indigenous and settler worldviews, and she will discuss how those contrasting practices influence our history and our relationships. We're so pleased that you've been able to join us tonight, all of you, to listen together, to learn, and to ask your own questions as we explore some very important topics with Bev. I am now very pleased to pass the virtual microphone over to Bev so we can get this important session started. Over to you, Bev.
Thank you, Marian. I appreciate that. Yeah, we go back a long ways. Caribou Chilcotin Justice Inquiry. You and I should write a book about that. Some interesting stuff. I had it's not a story to tell, but there was cocaine planted in my vehicle, and they did all kinds of things to try to throw us off. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time away from your evening to join us tonight. Thank you to Amy, who I've been going back and forth with about this, and also thank you to everyone at UVic who made this possible. And thank you to Danica for starting us in a good way. That always makes me feel good when someone does it like that. So my presentation this evening will concentrate on the differences between Indigenous and newcomer cultures, specifically how we traditionally raise children, our leadership styles, and the way we treat the environment. And sometimes I think this should be common knowledge by now, but I'll just put my spin on it. So to begin with, I want to share two very different views of raising children to demonstrate how shocking and traumatic it would be for Indigenous children to be taken from their homes. In the mid-1980s, I was attending what was then Caribou College in Kamloops, and we were assigned the play Les Miserables to read. It was written in 1862 And I believe that was my first introduction to European culture. I remember being shocked that the main character was put in jail for stealing a loaf of bread. Of course, from that followed a life of hardship and trying to hide from his past. I couldn't get past the idea of putting someone in jail for stealing bread. I just could not understand that. In Indigenous communities, if someone was hungry, it is your responsibility to share with them. I will illustrate this point by using my husband's family and their names in the Muskama tribe. It is the clearest example of how our Indigenous and non-Indigenous cultures were so different. Bill's name as a newborn was Pungweed. This literally translates to he who is so superior that he exists above everyone else. Bill says that it was just a juvenile name with little or no value in his tribe. He later earned the name Hemus Klalilikla, which means first rank among the eagles and the chief that is always there to help. Bill's mother was Putladi, and it simply means that she is a good host and guests never leave her home hungry. Her name is one of the highest ranking names in the tribe and can only be held by women of stature. It is more prestigious than any name given to men. The names reflect the value system of the tribe, where culture is based on helping, nurturing, comforting, and feeding as the highest duties in the tribe. Back to Les Miserables. The play also documented the horrible conditions that children of the lower class had to endure. Writings of both pre- and post-industrial Europe were defined by the terrible exploitation of children as young as 6 years old, who were forced into labor as prostitutes, factory workers, miners, chimney sweeps, and beggars. The cruelties inflicted upon children from the lower classes of society resulted in terrible injury and death for many thousands. Later, when I learned about debt prisons, I thought, what kind of messed up society is that? And these were the people coming here to force their way of life on the Indigenous people. Oral history of the Indigenous people reveal a very loving way of parenting, and now some books are being written about the proper way to parent, and they are based on Indigenous ways. Writings of the first Europeans about the inhabitants of what is now known as North America can be used as a snapshot to help create a picture of Indigenous life prior to colonization. This is a quote from a paper released in 1996 by a person named Miller, and he quoted an earlier source who said, "On parenting and children, Indian children are not obstinate, since they give them everything they ask for without ever letting them cry for that which they want. The greatest persons give way to the little ones. The father and the mother draw the morsel from their mouth if the child asks for it. They love their children greatly," unquote. The way children were raised in residential schools was so different, and I personally can attest to going from the very stable, safe home of my grandparents to the shock of being abused in so many ways at the residential school. The schools, which were more like prisons, were not designed to produce highly educated, well-rounded human beings. They produced generations of children who were traumatized, and most suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. And for many, this stayed with them most of their lives. Nightmares used to be a regular part of my existence, and despite working on myself for decades, I still have the occasional nightmare about being in that institution. The right of Indigenous families to create and sustain healthy, caring relationships based on love and mutual respect was denied under the Indian Act, legislation that made all status Indians wards of the state. The community was deprived of a meaningful role in the lives of their children. Both adults and children suffered terribly from this loss. My grandmother, born in 1896, had a terrible experience at the school and made sure we knew she did not want to send us there, but parents and grandparents went to jail if they did not surrender their children. In the context of residential school, killing the Indian meant disconnecting children physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually from their language, culture, and their communities, and also, but most painfully, from their own sense of identity as Indigenous. The following 4 disconnection paragraphs are taken from a paper prepared for the Aboriginal Healing Foundation called Reclaiming Connections, Understanding Residential School Trauma Among Aboriginal People. It was done by Deborah Chanteneuf. First one, physical disconnection, was achieved by removing children from loving families and communities and forcing them to grow up in institutions among prejudiced strangers. When you are raised in a traumatic and abusive environment, such as the residential school, you begin to think this is normal. Unfortunately, many children who have never set foot inside a residential school are taught this as well. Second, mental disconnection was achieved by forbidding children to use their own languages or any familiar customs that may have given them comfort. Without language, the key to the distinctive worldview of Indigenous cultures was lost. Instead, children learned not to think and to accept whatever is dished out to you, no matter how painful or unfair it might be. This too carried on into many adult lives. Emotional disconnection was achieved by teaching children that the parents, grandparents, and the elders that they loved so loved were not fit to raise them. Families were separated from each other for years, and many only got to reacquaint themselves when they were adults. Family teachings and bonds were broken. I personally did not get to know some of my immediate family until I was in my 20s. Spiritual disconnection was achieved by teaching children to turn away from their spiritual beliefs and adopt the new religion or suffer God's wrath eternally. And there's not enough time in this presentation to talk about the harms done there. The profound loneliness and grief arising from multi-layered disconnections and accumulated losses are directly linked to the most acute problems facing Indigenous families and communities today. We are talking about overcoming multiple levels of trauma over a period of at least 180 years in Western Canada, longer in other parts. Trauma and its effects were passed on to the next generation and was compounded with the trauma that the younger generations endured themselves. On to leadership. Many people know that Indigenous people had their own traditional leadership. In fact, some of the Indigenous ways of governing were adopted by the newcomers. Unfortunately, not all of it. Indigenous people believed from thousands of years of experience that their leaders had to be trained with the best knowledge and information humans could provide. But this represented only half the necessary knowledge required. The other half was the relationship to Mother Earth. Only then were you truly qualified to be a leader of your people. That is why when the newcomers arrived, they were amazed at the wealth of this country. But they saw the wealth in a different way than the Indigenous peoples. I was listening to the podcast, This Land, and the attempts by the US government to deal with the Indians. Before the 1870s, the USA embraced a policy of annihilation, which included violent massacres, forced starvation, and moving Native Americans into concentration camps. But in the late 1880s, the US decided to try something new Rather than killing Indians off, the government wanted to assimilate them. They felt that individual Indians might survive, but their cultures and languages and their tribes would not. Like Canada, the US government sent Indian children to boarding schools and outlawed Native ceremonies. The US government also started the process of allotment. These new policies were supposed to be good for the Indians, and one of their biggest cheerleaders was a senator named Henry Dawes. He had convinced himself that the Indians were poor because they owned land communally, and tried to change that by allotting individual plots of land. It was a failure because rather than the individual Indians trying to outdo each other, they helped each other in their plots of land, and they shared. The flaw that Dawes perceived in the system was that there was no incentive for one man to improve himself above his neighbors. And Dawes summarized that the one ingredient that had made the white man so successful, but was lacking in Indian culture, was greed. And so when the newcomers arrived, they saw a land of milk and honey in terms of how much money they could make individually. In Europe, over-harvesting of the resources and pollution of the waters was common. Air pollution was commonly accepted as the smell of prosperity. And so they continued these destructive practices in our rich, resource-rich waters and lands. And that is how we have gotten into this mess. Rachel Carson published her book, Silent Spring, in 1962, selling more than 500,000 copies in 24 countries. This represented a watershed moment in environmental history. Until this point, mainstream America remained largely oblivious to environmental concerns and how a polluted environment threatens human health. Indigenous peoples had been warning of this since contact, but it took Carson's book to raise public awareness and concern for living organisms, the environment, and the inseparable links between pollution and public health. I always say that it's too bad Indigenous peoples died out by the millions from diseases brought by the newcomers. Had we survived and forced the newcomers to adopt our way of life, the world would be a better place today in so many ways. The fact is that without the set of principles and values taught by the relationship to Mother Earth, Mother Nature, no leader is capable of governing wisely. The way most Indigenous communities govern themselves today is in line with the Indian Act, but many don't know how the Indian Act came to be. I am sure they assume a group of people got together to write it. Not. The man responsible for the 1876 Indian Act was Lawrence Van Coffnet. He was 31 years old when he wrote the Indian Act. His qualifications? Very limited. He had a bit of clerking experience, but didn't work much because he had a disorder of the nervous system that left him bedridden for much of the time. Others did not like him. He was narrow-minded, overly opinionated, and because of that, he was a loner. But he belonged to a family that acquired wealth in Canada. Lawrence's father helped finance John A. Macdonald's effort to become Canada's first prime minister. And when John A. Macdonald was running for prime minister, one of his promises was to manage the Indians. Once he won, the Van Coffnets twisted the prime minister's arm to hire young Lawrence. Apparently, John A. Macdonald was reluctant to hire Lawrence, but I guess he decided that it was better to have a chief clerk who didn't like consulting with anyone, rather than to offend his sponsors, the Van Coffnets. And so we still live with this guy every day. And our balanced traditional Indigenous ways of governing ourselves were outlawed under the Indian Act. Our problems in the community continue because of that 31-year-old twit and those who choose to enforce the Indian Act. The Indian Act is a myth. just a story that they invented to remove us from our economy and give the newcomers unfettered access to acquire their wealth. Unfortunately, too many people still believe the myth, and it is maintained by lawyers and politicians who have too much to lose if they admit that what they are enforcing is wrong. Even though we are becoming more aware of the racial oppressions that have to change, we now have an even bigger problem. Many know that the traditional Indigenous ways dictate that we have to provide for 7 generations ahead so they have a healthy environment to sustain them. In Canadian law today, a child only has rights if it is born alive. No mention of future generations. Isn't that sad? I heard a prophecy when I was a teenager that the world would be looking to Indigenous people for solutions when things got too bad. I didn't believe it at the time because we couldn't even get our feet inside the door of industry or government. Now, many are looking to Indigenous people around the world to stop the destruction and allow Mother Earth to heal herself. I have heard the saying a number of times that science is finally catching up to Indigenous knowledge. It is a fact that wherever Indigenous people are involved in their territories, the environment is healthier. Science needs the knowledge of Indigenous people to be truly successful. Unfortunately, some Indigenous people have not been taught the way of their ancestors or have embraced the newcomers' way of thinking. Clean water for survival and taking only what you need has become foreign to some. Thankfully, there is a trade-off, and much of Indigenous teachings have made it into some of the newcomers' way of thinking. We now hear non-Indigenous people using phrases such as Mother Earth or everything is connected. And I was shocked when I first heard a politician on TV using those phrases, and it wasn't more than a few years ago. I can't remember who it was, but I was so pleased that our teachings were breaking through the dominant way of thinking. But at the rate we're going now, I worry that even 3 generations ahead will have a very difficult time. It is so important to get to the tipping point to make others aware of how destructive our lifestyle is. Resource extraction of all kinds is the starting point for everything pollution and climate change brings. But the resource companies have all kinds of money to alter the truth and pull the wool over many people's eyes. I am not saying there cannot be resource extraction. I am saying that the environmental standards need to be considered before profits. Maybe they only make millions and not billions. Maybe we force them to ensure the environment is protected. It is simple common sense, but unfortunately, when it comes to money, common sense goes out the window. The evidence of mass destruction is everywhere if people just take a look around them. Report after report is coming out warning of fish, birds, plants, and animals disappearing everywhere. As humans, we protect ourselves by having filtered water, air-conditioned homes, cars, and offices. In this way, we don't feel the full effect of what we are doing. The finned, the winged, the four-legged, the plants, and all the other communities on Earth do not have the natural air conditioner they need anymore. They don't have filtered water. They are forced to live in the overheated and polluted water that humans create. We need to keep other communities front and center because without them, we become extinct because what they need, we need. We have seen how greed and the accumulation of wealth in the hands of a few excludes the interests of many. But who makes them rich and who gives them that power? Individually, we do. So I always think about what I buy and try not to get sucked in by those flashy ads prompting me to buy things that I do not need. Is it a need or is it just a convenient want? I swear, convenience will be our downfall. In thinking about my purchases, which are usually secondhand, I save money, I save the environment, and I take power away from the big corporations. And people tell me, but I'm just one person, what difference can I make? And I tell them to think of a raindrop. One raindrop doesn't hurt anyone. But think of many, many raindrops, and it can become a flood. No one is coming to fix our problems. So in order to save ourselves and look out for future generations, we all have to become part of the flood and change the way we consume. But we need to act fast. When we are sick, our temperature rises and our immune system goes into action to try to kill the viruses that are making us sick. Now Mother Earth is getting sick. Her temperature is rising and her immune system is going into action to try to get rid of the viruses, us. We are the viruses that need to be eradicated, and Mother Earth is doing her best to get rid of us. This comes in the way of crazy weather and storms, COVID and other viruses, heat waves, fires, and floods. Mother Earth is talking to us and we need to listen. Before the pandemic, our children and grandchildren around the world were in the streets fighting for their future, and we need to help them. We have to fight for all of our grandchildren, even the grandchildren of those polluting the earth, because those grandchildren also have a right to a healthy, sustainable future, even if their ancestors don't take that into consideration. Orange Shirt Day is coming this weekend, and if we say every child matters, we need to really think about what that means, not just for that day, next week, or next year, but for generations ahead. The common denominator we all have is our children and grandchildren. And so I ask the ancestors to help us all process what we learn and make the changes needed for future generations. And please know that your ancestors and the Creator will have your back to do the work needed. And Mother Earth will thank you. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Bev. What a moving presentation. But I'm not surprised knowing you. And I think for all of us, there'll be new depth and reinforced commitment to Orange Shirt Day coming up, as you mentioned. We'll now move into the Q&A portion of this evening's event. And if you would like to ask Bev a question, please put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now, I am going to start off, Bev, by reading the first question to you from David Myatt. Thank you, David. Hi, Bev. Thank you for your time. I'm curious what happened in 1967 that allowed kids to go to regular schools instead of the mission. I'm happy you were able to attend regular school after that point. I can't find information on what occurred in 1967, though. Was it a BC legislation or was it federal? Were the kids in other provinces also given a choice in 1967? Thank you, David.
Oh, 1967, that was a awesome year for me and a bad year for me. That is when my grandfather died, the summer of 1967. But before he died, Bishop O'Connor, well, he wasn't a bishop then, Father O'Connor, who was the principal at the residential school, came out to our community, and he was telling us that the law hadn't changed yet, but there was a possibility that by September, my brothers and I would be able to stay home. Oh my God, when I heard that, I was just, happiness. I just couldn't believe it. And I was just praying and praying that we were able to stay home, and we were. And I think it would have been federal legislation that changed. I've never gone back and looked up that legislation or whatever. I just knew that I was able to stay home. So yeah, but it would be federal.
Bev, you have many fans. I'll just read a few of the comments from Dally. The first one. Thank you, Bev Sellars, for sharing your knowledge with us this evening. And from Danielle Van Shake, I'd love to learn more about Indigenous child rearing practices. Thank you so much.
There are books out there, and I bought one. I was just last year. Is it last year? Yeah, they're soon to be turning one. I became a great grandmother. I'm 68 years old, so I think I'm old enough to be a great grandmother. But I bought. I should have wrote down the. I was thinking about it earlier today, and I should have written it down. But there are books out there, and I've seen a couple of others about the way Indigenous people parent. And maybe I can send it to Amy or Marion. I'll find out the name of it and you can share it.
Thanks, Bev.
Yeah, but I'm sure you can find it on Google as well. Yeah.
Oh, Bev, this is the tough one. Do you think it is possible to shift concepts of land ownership and using the land for profit in response to the current housing crisis? The Western ideal that everyone have their own individual plot of land seems so ingrained, but housing for profit seems to have got us to a very damaging place. Would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh my goodness.
Do you want me to reread it?
No, I got it. That's such a, I mean, my husband and I were talking about it. There was another news program and the other night, and I was telling him, what is the solution to that? You know, like we have so many things that we put money towards. And I think in order to, sometimes it's almost too late and you have to concentrate on the kids and make sure every child matters. That is so important that we remember that. And I have a lot of relatives down on Hastings Street down there, and you know, they tell me their stories, and yet they'll take you in and they'll do whatever they can for you, and you know, they're beautiful human beings. And they've ended up, none of them planned to end up there. And you know, like I haven't looked at the federal budget for a long time, but or the provincial budget. I haven't been involved in politics for such a long time, but some of those things and these, you know, these studies they do, I'm thinking, why do they do that? You know, like, and I think that if Indigenous people were put in charge of their own people, you know, they could easily solve that crisis. But there are so many that aren't Indigenous as well, and they come from other countries. I remember this when I was working at the law firm, and I remember, can't remember what they call it, where you go in and deal with people that don't have a lawyer. It's been so long since I've been there, but I went in there and there was this guy from the Middle East, and he had come to this country, and he was a doctor or something like that, and he ended up on the streets. And you know, I'm thinking, at the time I was thinking, geez, you know, he's got all these skills and here he ends up on the streets, and now he's in trouble and probably will go to jail. And just the way we deal with people is just messed up. And you know, I don't know, everything comes down to money. Even the forest fires, first thing I hear, you know, when they're talking about forest fires is, oh, we lost so many millions of, you know, whatever money that, you know, it's worth so many millions of dollars. And I'm thinking, well, what about all the animals in there? What about the people that rely on it? The people that go picking berries, the ones that, you know, are not looking at it in terms of money only, but the news people, that's all they do. And I guess that's what they get from the governments or whatever. But I wish I had a solution for housing. I would definitely put it forward, but I don't know. You know, you try to make them as comfortable as possible, and you treat them as human beings, because that's what they are. They've come onto hard times, and like I said, I have lots of relatives down there, but they're human beings. You try to do the best for them, but the majority of the concentration has to end up, has to go to the children, and make sure that they don't end up on those streets. And my community, we've had a lot of gang activity in my community, and unfortunately, a lot of them were the kids that just didn't have anything. And then Hell's Angels came along, and in order to get the things that they wanted, they joined them. And so now a lot of our boys are either dead or in jail because they've been warring. So that's the result. That just has to change. Put the women in charge. Everywhere.
We know that, Bev.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, next question from an anonymous attendee. I grew up in Chase in the 1960s and 70s. I can't understand how none of us knew about children being taken to residential school. Why wasn't it talked about back then?
Oh, because they needed to get rid of us. That's plain and simple. They didn't want everybody knowing that they were, indoctrinating us in these institutions. And I remember, actually, I was when my book first started came out, and I was doing a presentation at UVic, and this older gentleman came to me, and he says, I think he had 3 degrees or something like that. He says, I have 3 degrees. I am well read. I have never heard anything about this, So it was Canada's big secret. When you start investigating why we were put in residential schools, in the book I talk a little bit about it, but it was to get us out of there. And of course, they're not going to tell the public about what's going on, And the public, I remember this guy in Williams Lake, he was saying, yeah, I had Indian friends, and every September they would disappear and then reappear in June. He says, I never thought to question where they went. That's just the way it was. So people get used to something, and but it was to indoctrinate us into a different way and not be Indigenous. But it didn't work.
Very true.
Yeah.
From another anonymous attendee, thank you, Bev. What a great talk. I really like the analogy of the raindrop. How do you go about persuading people to notice their own, to use a somewhat overused word, hypocrisy?
We got to shame them. It's just like, you think about how the Joneses, you got to keep up with the Joneses, and so it's the same concept. You have to shame them into, why are you buying all that stuff? And talk about their children. We all want to be good ancestors, and going out and, everybody blames the corporations. Oh, those corporations, but it's us who make them powerful, and we have to remember that. And so each of us, if we go out and tell people, you shouldn't be doing that. People use a plastic bag one time and then they throw it away, and that plastic lasts forever. You can wash it and wash it and wash it. Even in the, I've even washed mine in the dishwasher, and it comes out fine, So I wash mine all the time, little things. And there are so many websites now that, so send your friends and your family. And I know it's difficult. It really is difficult. Even in my family, I have a difficult time sometimes with some of my family who don't listen, but we've got to just keep on. And instead of keeping up with the Joneses now, you got to protect the future generations. You've got to turn the conversation into something else.
Hey, from Marcus Busick, where can I find more information on the 7 generations? And can it be applied to other subjects for learning and growth in K-12 education? For example, history and arts, etc.?
Well, the 7 generations is common to all Indigenous people. And there are so many things that are common to Indigenous people. And I was reading and I was trying to find it and I couldn't find it. But this elder was saying at one time, we were a small group of people, but then we started going out different, to different areas. And that's why our beliefs are so common. I've been down to South America a couple of times and I'm quite surprised. I mean, the people down there, they could be from my neighboring communities or from my community. They look so different. I'm like, oh my God, that guy looks like he could be from Canoe Creek, or oh, that guy looks like he could be from Canem or whatever. But there was an article and I can't find it. I've got so much stuff. I've got an archive and I know what I have. I just don't know where it is. But anyways, this elder was talking about how we were all, that's why we have the same beliefs. And so it's a common thing for Indigenous people to think 7 generations ahead. And it's an oral tradition. So there are many, I think, Indigenous laws that should be adopted in Canadian law. And that one about future generations should be one of them.
Thanks, Bev. Next one. Oh, take a deep breath. I am an Indigenous teacher. How can I teach about the history of residential schools without being re-traumatized myself?
Oh, geez. When I wrote my book, and I say in my book that I cried enough tears to fill a swimming pool when I was writing the book, but it was really therapeutic for me. And even when I would go out to speak, when I first started to go out and speak, many times I would break down. I just would start crying. And it was really embarrassing for me because I thought, oh God, they're going to think I'm so weak. I can't even handle my own emotions and whatever. But then I before I would start my presentation, I would tell the audience, if I break down, if I start crying, just give me a minute and I'll compose myself and we'll carry on and we'll finish. So, I mean, it's a part of who you are. And if, like people know that it's traumatizing. I mean, like I had a hell of a dream about 6 months ago of being in, this nun was after me and, I woke up and I was absolutely terrified. So, it is traumatizing and, but let them know that this is all a part of healing. And yeah, you're going to break down, but do it, and I've found that the more I talk about it, and put it in a perspective, the easier it is for me to explain to other people. So there's no shame in crying. I thought there was at one time, but there's no shame in crying. It's all part of healing.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
From David Myatt, are there any books or movies you would recommend to people looking to find out more about the residential schools?
Oh, Bones of Crows just came out. Oh my goodness. I was so proud of the city of Campbell River. They bought tickets for everybody to go to that show. And I was like, right on. I mean, my home community is just north of Williams Lake, but I was down here with my husband, but yeah, just Bones of Crows. And then there was one in Australia, and We Were Children is another one. Yeah, and then there are documentaries about, some people have done documentaries. I can't think of it right now, but yeah, those are good too. Here, James Cattell, he did one for the local TV here, the Channel 4 or whatever it is, the local one. He did a really good job of explaining residential schools. That was really good. James Quattell, Quattell, I think is how you spell his name. Anyway, yeah, they're out there. Oh, and Bones of Crows, the main lady, the lady that she's the mother, or she's from 16 or whatever. She's Sigwatan. She's from one of our communities. I was so proud of that. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I'm just going to paraphrase a question here from Sheila Levy, and pardon me, Sheila, if I mispronounced your name. Do you have hope that people can come together to save the future for our children and all other species?
Well, I have hope, and and that's why I talk to individuals. I don't go and talk to politicians because they listen to the individual people that elect them. So I tell people, it's your responsibility to go out there and make sure that your politician knows about this. And I think if we all start coming, and I keep saying the common denominator is our children and grandchildren, even those kids, the people that are out there polluting and destroying the earth. We need to protect them as well. They have a right to a healthy future. So things are changing. I mean, I talked about, the prophecy. I heard about that prophecy when I was a teenager. Never thought it would ever happen. And here now, Indigenous people, I'm part of the Indigenous Leadership Initiative, and there are guardian people right across Canada. I can't remember how many guardian programs there are now, over 100, I think about 130 across Canada, where Indigenous people are out there. And there are a lot of groups, non-Indigenous groups, that also know how important it is and are, they are talking the language and are trying to do what they can to help. So I think collectively, if we all just keep talking and keep telling people, do you care for your children or grandchildren? And that's what I do. I don't care if I shame them. I want to fight for my grandchildren and all the other grandchildren. And if I hurt somebody's feelings, I don't care. I'm going to keep talking.
Okay, Bev, keep talking, because here's a really good one for you from Cosmo Brunch Rendak. And I'll invite you to look at the Q&A box, because I'm sorry, Cosmo, I don't know how to pronounce your greeting to Bev. However, Cosmo writes, you mentioned, thank you. I'm learning, Bev.
Yeah.
You mentioned convenience will be the end of us during your talk. I'm curious if you can share some words of encouragement for those of us who are working on being better, such as not buying the newest unnecessary items, living in relationship with the land, etc. Are there any more ways you might suggest we tackle this issue of our overconsumption?
Yeah, I mean, just clothing. If there was not another set of clothing made as of today, we would all have enough to do us for, all the people in the world, so when I go shopping, I very rarely, I remember about 2 years ago, I bought a shirt, a brand new shirt, because I was stuck. I was going to do something and I didn't have a dress shirt. I hadn't packed one. And my family just about fell over that I had bought something new. They also know never to buy me anything for my birthday, never to buy me anything for Christmas. We have a big, we have a dinner for whoever's around, but people buy me stuff and I don't want it. If I don't need it. And if I need it, I'll buy it. And if I don't need it, I don't want it. And Christmas really hits me the wrong way. But my family knows not to buy me anything for my birthday or for Christmas. And a nice card from them on Mother's Day or on my birthday means more to me than any gift they could give. And I tell them, take me out to dinner, spend some time with me. That means more. So we have to change the way we think about things. And there are so many things that you could do, and there are websites of how to, I don't have easy to find. Just look on the Google it, and you'll find all kinds of websites about how you can lessen your consumerism. So, but it's yeah. it's not hard. The information is out there. Go to David Suzuki's website. He's got a good one. His daughter's running it now. So, yeah.
Thanks, Bev. From Ilsa. You discussed the Indigenous link to the land and sense of responsibility for the environment and being a good ancestor. How do you think Indigenous cultures could be affected by climate change in the future?
Well, Indigenous cultures are directly related to the land, and I think it's important that the non-Indigenous realize that their cultures need to be directly related to the land as well. It's not us that have to go and change the way that we think about our culture. Everybody in the world, and it's starting to come. It's not quite there yet, but people are starting to realize. I mean, before the pandemic, the kids were out there marching around the world. It made me so happy, and we need to help them. They know this is their future that they're looking at. So they know, and we need to help them.
And the final question, Bev, from Kate. I can hear her laughing. What did you take from your time at UVic that stays with you through to this day?
Oh, I loved UVic. Absolutely loved UVic. I loved the city. I loved the university. You talked about there was no Indigenous group there when you went, Marion. We had a little cubbyhole in some far away underneath way back, but it didn't matter. We still got together. We still, talked about issues. Doesn't matter where we were. I mean, I love the beautiful big house or long house or whatever they call it there now. It's absolutely beautiful. But, we did what we could and UVic was really, I think I loved the learning atmosphere. I remember walking onto campus and seeing the library, and it was 4 stories high. And I just stood there and I wanted to just drain everything from that library into my brain. I just loved the atmosphere of learning. So I really got a lot out of university. And it had been a lifelong dream. I didn't go to the university until I was 38. So yeah. And by then I'd been chief, and we'd already done the justice inquiry. Yeah, and so I kind of had a bit of experience, and so really loved UVic. I still love UVic. Every time we go down there, my husband and I drive around there. Yeah, it's good.
Well, thank you, Bev. Thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us. We're fortunate to have had the time with you this evening. And, we're all putting on our thinking caps, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who have joined and asked questions, thank you for your questions. And for those of you who have put book titles, movie titles, other reference materials in the Q&A and chat, thank you very much for your contributions as well. In closing, I just want to say that the Alumni Association is very proud to be able to share these speaking events with you, and also being able to share a wonderful alumni. As we close, I also want to remind everyone that it's time to nominate recipients for the Distinguished Alumni Awards. This happens every year, and the University of Victoria and the UVic Alumni Association want to recognize extraordinary graduates like Bev through these awards. So I invite you to nominate a friend, a family member, a colleague, a former classmate, people who are making impacts in their communities. Alumni staff will share a link with you about how to do the nomination. That link will be in the chat. So in closing, everyone, thank you so much. Thank you, Bev. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, alumni staff, for helping us all come together in a good way. Danica, thank you for starting us in a good way. On behalf of the UVic Alumni Association, we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.